under street lamp, red face flamed by the light. I'm going away. I'm going away. I'm going away. And the sun gonna shine on a brand new day. Must be somewhere welcome me into the fold. Blooming flowers, as much as I can afford. I'm gone away. I'm gone away. I'm gone away. And the sun gonna shine on a brand new day for me. A brand new day for love. Brand new day for me. Brand new day for love. Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gone away. I'm gone away. Yeah. And the sun gonna shine on a brand new day for me. A brand new day for love. Brand new day for me. Brand new day for love. Brand new day for me. Brand new day for love. Brand new day for me. Brand new day for love. Yeah. In the morning, I wake up feeling no pain. Long stretches, I get to remember it. Then I see my bed is empty on one side. Back in the sheet, the only place I can hide. In the morning, I'm wondering how I'm gonna get through the night. Sick and weary, and only your love's gonna make it right. I close the curtain, sweating, shaking all over. Imagine you're here. I'm looking up at the door. I'm a better man with your love than without. Stuck in the sill, just a little. Take me along the way. Won't you visit? Won't you stop by to see? I'm a better man with your love than without. In the sea, they never make it out. In the morning, I'm wondering how I'm gonna get through the night. I'm sick and weary. Only your love's gonna make it right. Only your love, only your love. 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 Only your love, only your
Racing my own thoughts into the silence, seeking the guidance I forgot. It's somewhere lost, lost in cages, cages of chaos. I forgot. Somewhere it must be written. I just lost my access to the map. Somewhere love has hidden. I chase the apple and realize can't let it go. Baby,
in the morning, I wake up feeling no pain, long stretches, I get to remember it. Then I see my bed is empty on one side, back in the sheet, the only place I can hide. In the morning, I'm wondering how I'm gonna get through the night. Sick and weary, and only your love's gonna make it right. I close the curtain, sweating, shaking all over. Imagine you're here. I'm looking up at the door. I'm a better man with your love than without. Stuck in the sill, I may never make it out. In the morning, I'm wondering how I'm gonna get through the night. Sick and weary, only your love's gonna make it right. Yeah, only your love, only your love, only your love, only your love.